now for Digital Muscle, I am joined by the natural Mike Ashley by way of Arizona?
To Florida now.
Arizona to Florida, man.
Right,
we got some history here. We're going to take it back to the beginning. It's been quite a minute, man. You disappeared from the landscape of bodybuilding somewhere in the early 90s.
Yeah.
But you were there in the mid to late 80s. I think the first time I heard about Mike Ashley was 1986, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct.
Where did you make your big splash? How did you turn pro?
86 world champions.
The 86 World Championships, which took place where?
Tokyo.
Tokyo, Japan.
Yeah.
How the hell did you wind up going to the World Champ? What sent you to Japan?
All right, so I went to the Nationals, and I was runner-up to Tom Terwilliger.
Tommy Terwilliger, a former
right.
national champion, 1986?
86, yeah, he won the 86.
Yeah, he won his class.
Yeah, he won.
Gary
his class.
Stridham won the overall.
Yeah, Gary Stridham won the overall. But that was the first year they were going to test the World Championships.
That's right.
And actually, I remember the story. Jim Mannion says to me, "Say you're natural. If you go there and you fail the drug test, you're going to get fined or you're going to get banned." And I said, "Oh, I'm fine."
That
So,
typically would sound like a threat.
Yeah, it was a threat.
You didn't take it that way.
But I didn't take it that way because, I was pretty comfortable with my, my lifestyle for the whole years of bodybuilding.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the World Championships and I was successful there. And then
Got your
from
pro
there,
card.
pro
Had you
card.
been out of the country anytime prior to that?
No, that was it.
So what did the family think about you leaving the country to go and compete in a bodybuilding show?
Well, I gotta tell you gotta remember I was born, I call it coming from humble beginnings. I was born in Jamaica.
Jamaica, man.
Yeah, in a little town I was living in a little town called Drapers. And my family basically says, hey, I want the best for the kids from an opportunity standpoint. So we came to the United States. And, without getting too much into that aspect of it, I got involved with bodybuilding, as I mentioned in the seminar last night. These guys, basically one guy saw me at the bus stop one day. I never forget it. Sam Velez was his name. He says, we're opening up a gym in Martin neighborhood. Okay. And you look like you have potential. Now, I was running on a track team before that, but I was always doing push-ups and stuff with my track coach. Mm-hmm. And, they more or less took me in. And that's one of the difference when we were speaking last night about how much bodybuilding has changed because everybody's got a coach now and they're paying them all this money. Right. When I started out, the guys were just, one guy would show me how to pose, the other guys would say, hey man, you got to get into eating this way. And pretty much a lot of those guys back then, they did a lot of low carbohydrate dieting. Yeah. But I never forgot, I bought a book called The Nutrition Almanac, and I learned about protein, carbohydrates, and fat. I learned about tracking and all of that stuff from back then, and I started logging and...
kind of like with Gaspari. Gaspari wrote down everything.
Yeah. I mean, I have my manuals from way back then. But anyway, it just turned out that my family got involved into seeing the lifestyle. Okay. Because I don't care if it was Thanksgiving, Christmas, I ate a certain way. And more or less, even now that I don't compete, I made a lifestyle as opposed to just, hey, it's bodybuilding this. And, you got to manipulate a few things later on. So when they found out that I had competed, first you had to go to a pose down to go to the Nationals. In New York, they had this thing where if you win the pose down, you get all your expenses paid to the Nationals. Wow. So I won the pose down in New York, and so my family was very much involved with what was going on and watching the transition. And I had won, I don't think I was ever beaten in my height class when I was an amateur.
Okay, you only were 5'7", maybe?
5'8" at the time. I got a little shorter now that I got older.
We all did.
Yeah. But what happened is, there was so much involved. My dad used to say, okay, I got to get the chicken for Mike, my family was supportive in the cooking and the whole 9 yards. So going to winning the pose down and going to the Nationals and getting runner-up, it was like, even though I didn't win the event, it was a big thing. But then here comes my shot to go to the World Championships. Of course, my family, they were just...
You had to get a passport?
Oh, man, why are you bringing up all these beautiful stories?
I mean, I'm saying...
No, I have some beautiful stories with my journey. So I'm so thankful because... Yeah. I had applied for my citizenship. I did not get my citizenship coming up to the World Championships. I had this friend. His name was Jimmy, and he said, he worked at a law firm, and the Prince of Monaco, can you imagine that, was at that law firm at the time. And he said to me, I said, I have this problem. It was close, and I didn't have my citizenship as yet. I don't know how it happened, but I know he told him, and whether they went and just researched where I was at with my paperwork, by the time I was supposed to go, I had my citizenship.
So you were training and dieting, didn't know whether you were going to have,
Did not know what I was.
and you got it at the last minute.
And I got it, and I mean, you know, sometimes you say things were meant to be.
Yeah.
And it was part of the plan because it worked out. I went to the World Championships, and I wouldn't say, you know, I applaud guys who are confident. You don't have to be cocky, but you got to be passionate and confident. First time in Japan, I was not nervous. I was. It was just meant to be.
Do you remember who you beat to get your pro card?
You know, I remember the faces, but I don't remember the names right now.
Yeah, this is 1986.
Yeah, back in 1986. I didn't know a lot of the guys. I just remember myself, Paul Jean Guillaume. We were both. I was the light heavyweight, and he was the middleweight. Jose Guzman.
Guzman, yes.
Yeah. And, you know, we went there, and it was just an amazing experience.
Well, let's fast forward. Now, 1986, you're a professional. 1987, did you compete as a pro?
Right off the bat.
I think, was that the Detroit show?
That's another story.
Oh, okay.
Hey, you're asking for
Yeah.
it. So what happened is I go into Detroit Grand Prix, and you know, it was a great experience for me coming off you know, the World Championships. I won the Detroit Grand Prix. Now, you know,
Who did you beat in Detroit?
Ron Love was there.
Ron Love, wow.
Even Tom Platz was there. Shane DeMora was there. You know, so there was a number of you know, guys that were.
Wait, Tom Platz was
Yeah, that
competing
was his-
in the show.
Yeah, that was his last show. I
Wow,
think.
okay.
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
a whole another
yeah.
generation. Tom Platz was like in the Mr. Olympia in 1981, I
Dude,
remember.
man, one of the things you got to remember, compared to today, I came from an era where we just look at those guys like...
Yeah, admiration.
Admiration and awe. You know, I remember the first time I saw Arnold compete, it was like, whoa. You know, it was just such an art form. You know, as you know, it was back in those
Sure.
days. But the guys were a lot more close-knit, which was beautiful. But, yeah, but what happened with the Detroit Grand Prix, they usually have us do photo sessions, as you know, after the events. And what happened was they said to me, the photographer said, okay, I would love for you to change your flight to be able to do this photo session, because I planned that right after the show, I was going to just go home, go back to Phoenix. And I said, you know, I just won this show. I just want to go home. I was so, you know, it was
How much
like
did you get paid?
10 grand.
$10,000.
So I said to myself, this is my first $10,000, winning my first pro show, and I'm just really thankful that I wanted to go home and just absorb the experience. And so, you know, today I probably did jump 10 times over and did all the photo shoots because of what social media and the publicity.
Sure.
And, you know, you learn that in the game. But I said, you know, I just felt like going home. So I go home and I'm, you know, enjoying my moment, and I kept getting all these phone calls that night. Because the flight, there were 2 flights going to Phoenix. And I said I wasn't going to change my flight. The flight that I would have changed to crashed in the bridge coming out of Detroit. And there was only one survivor, and it was a little girl. So now everybody, because, you know, people at the show knew that. Some of them knew. Yeah, I said, you know, I was asked to do a photo session, boom, 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 whatever. But I ended up in the last minute, I just went home. And it so happened that if I'd stayed, I would have been on that flight.
Wow.
And that would have been my number. And, you know, I just say it wasn't meant to be, or, you know.
Right.
So,
That's great. How did you know about that flight after? Like, how did that come back into your wheelhouse?
Well, what happened was I was researching what my options were to go to Phoenix.
Then you saw it on the news.
If they say you have, I didn't see it on the news. I got phone calls when I was home that night.
Wow.
So, because what happened, remember, you remember your first
You have to make phone calls, yeah,
you
right.
Remember your first
I remember everything about it.
You're so like, you're just
wide open,
in awe, you know, and I was so happy about it that I just wanted to go home. I was happy with it and I wanted to go home. But when he was asking me, you know, I researched, okay, you have another flight going to Phoenix that afternoon. And I just decided I was just going to go home. And then later on that night, I was getting phone calls. Man, because people thought, they didn't know whether or not I had flown on that flight, or because they just said a flight out of Detroit go on its way to Phoenix.
Yeah.
And
so that's bananas, man. The $1 million question. So Mannion's telling me you got to go to Japan to pass this test. You do. Now you go into your pro show. I'm assuming you're going into this pro show natural or not natural?
You know something, and I will tell you, I actually I have even an article from Muscle and Fitness where I said to them, if they really don't think I'm natural, get off your shit and come against me.
Right.
And they put these arrows of needles and everything, and I was doing the most
in
muscular,
your direction,
and going away from me.
Oh, okay.
And I was doing the demons and stuff, and I was doing the most muscular. And guys, I know it may seem weird or whatever, but I competed my entire career without ever taking steroids. And I also said to them, if you test me and you're willing, I will pay you $10,000 if I fail.
I saw that, right.
But if
You pay me
if
$10,000
I
to
pass,
pass.
you got to pay me $10,000. No one took it up.
So you and Jean-Paul Guillaume were the only two guys pounding that drum. I'm natural, I'm natural, I'm natural. And the majority of the industry is saying there's no freaking way. So we're in 86 passing tests, 87 winning your pro show. I think you beat Gary Stridham in Detroit.
He wasn't there. No,
Who'd you beat in Detroit?
Ron Love, I remember,
Ron Love,
was
right.
yeah,
And
Ron
Shane.
Love, yeah.
So now we get to 88 and 89. I kind of lost track of you in 88 and 99. I'm gonna fast track it because we're gonna clash heads in 1990.
Yeah.
But what happened in 88 and 89? Where were you?
Now, I've always been plagued, and you say you get your gifts from your parents. I'm extremely thankful for, I'd say, the genetic ability that I acquired from them. And at the same time, my mom used to struggle with knee issues, and then I grew up and I struggled with knee issues.
Knee issues. You think that's hereditary knee issues?
I'm not saying it's hereditary.
Okay.
I was extremely bow-legged.
Yeah.
And, if you're talking about from a biomechanical standpoint, I'm loading one area that's bowed like that with extreme loads. Because remember, I got into powerlifting
First.
in the bodybuilding first,
Oh, okay.
but then powerlifting when I went in the military.
Ah.
Because here's the beautiful story. In the military, I found out that I would be able to have separate rations, plus they gave me time to train in the afternoon by joining the powerlifting team.
Okay.
So when I joined the powerlifting team, even though my passion was bodybuilding, it was a blessing in disguise because I never knew what was manifesting. Today everybody's doing powerlifting with bodybuilding.
Right.
I was doing it back then, but I did it as a sport,
Right.
competing for the military.
Were you strong?
Nah,
Were you strong?
744 was 740 was my best squat.
Wow.
My best squat, my best bench, and that's with a pause was 430, and I did a 670 deadlift. So
That's impressive. I couldn't
Yeah.
even dream of doing that kind of
yeah,
weight.
but the whole.
How much were you weighing? What was your top
I
end?
mean, my maximum. I don't think probably 205, 210 was the heaviest I've ever been.
Wow, off season.
But in powerlifting, I was lifting in two weight classes. I was bouncing back between 181 and 198. And the reason why, I wasn't a full 198. I'd compete at 192, 194, but then sometimes I would diet down to make 181.
That makes it even more impressive because you're
yeah.
not a heavy set guy.
Exactly.
And you're
Yeah.
lifting more than people. Mine was like 235 off season, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
to do it at that 200-pound range was very impressive. So 88, 89, you had some injuries?
I had some knee issues.
Did you compete during those 2 years?
I took off and I said, okay, well, I had the injury, one of the knee injuries, and then I said, okay, I'm not going to compete. And then the big thing was, of course, going to the Ironman in 1990.
Well, let's back
And,
up. So
yeah.
the Ironman in 1990 was the first ever that publisher John Balick, the owner of Ironman magazine, was putting on the first ever Ironman show in Redondo Beach, where I would also be making a return to the stage because I competed in 88 at the Night of Champions.
Yeah.
I was looking for you in 88 at the Night of Champions. You weren't there. I had to run back into Phil Hill, Robbie Robinson, and Bob Paris, but it qualified me for the Olympia. Then 89, I was suspended, so I was totally out of action because I was training for the Arnold Classic, which is where we're at right now.
Right.
Didn't compete, got suspended for being injured. You were nowhere on the landscape, but the Ironman comes on the calendar. The only one I knew was going was Gary Stridham because he was training in Golds. I was training in Golds, and he was a massive, a big guy. I think he won the Night of Champions, I believe.
Yes,
Gary
did. He did.
Were you in that show?
Yeah.
That's what it was.
I was runner-up to
Here.
him in 9. Yeah.
And so here we come into Redondo Beach. You're coming into my backyard from Arizona.
Yeah.
I know you're coming. And everyone wants to know, is this guy natural going to beat me and everybody else that's in the contest? It was a big thing because, listen, 1988, I believe it was Ben Johnson that failed the test. The WBF WWF was testing for steroids.
Yeah.
Steroids were being talked about and kicked around to the degree that in 1990 they were going to start steroid testing these bodybuilding shows, not starting with the Ironman, but the Arnold Classic 2 weeks later. So we wind up in Redondo Beach. I'm first, you're second. I believe Stridham was, Vince Comerford, I think, was third.
Vince Comerford. J.J. Marsh was in there, too. It was me, J.J. Marsh, Vince Comerford.
Gary Stridham, and myself. So now me and you are the last two guys standing. I walk off with that 10,000. I asked you how much you won in '86 because the prize money didn't change.
Yeah, it was
Till
pretty
10,000.
slim.
What was your experience in Redondo Beach when you got there? Because you're coming off an injury, and now you got the rematch with Gary Stridham, and now you got me for the first time.
Actually, going to Night of the Champions, I have to give some credit to Arizona State University because I was a student at Arizona State.
That's right.
And actually, when I won my pro card, you start traveling, and my advisor, I wasn't able to make the classes as well, so I stopped going to school. I said, I'm going to make a decision to follow this pro journey and see where it takes me. And my advisor at the university actually she says to me, Michael, you can go back to school anytime, but you'll never get this opportunity again. But what they did was they started helping me. I was able to go in a metabolic ward at the school, and they did what's called resting metabolic rate, and just seeing how many calories I burn at rest. So my RMR, as we call it, was 2,200. She says to me, double it. So all these guys are dieting and killing themselves, and I'm at 4,000 calories. Then this guy, John Perillo, was talking about MCT oil.
Out of Cincinnati, Ohio?
Out of Hawaii, medium chain triglyceride. And I read about it, and one of the things is, I was like, I wanted to put on so much weight. I used to blend my food at night, drink it the whole 9 yards. And then this guy introduced me to MCT oil, and he calls it a carbolipid because, it actually goes into the system a little different than just the everyday, because it's a medium chain fat. Okay. And so you actually get this additional boost of energy from these additional fat calories in your diet. Mm-hmm. And so I started adding that to my diet on top of it.
Which means you're gaining weight?
So all of a sudden, Mike Ashley is like getting leaner and thicker. And plus I was doing powerlifting. That year I competed in a powerlifting meet coming prior to.
Wow.
So I had I call it a blessing in disguise because I was doing all these things that people are talking about today. The research doesn't support MCT oil as far as performance, and all due respect, but for me it worked. Okay. And I'll just put it that way. So I was doing all of this stuff, powerlifting the whole 9 yards, and believe me, J.J. Marsh, and Vinnie Comerford were training in the same gym.
Yeah.
So,
Arizona.
There was some great energy in that gym.
Yeah.
And the Blonde Myth, how huge he used to be.
Yeah, the late Vinnie Comerford, second in the 87 Nationals in the middleweights.
Yeah. And
actually, you won the middleweights. You lost in the pose down.
Right. And then what happened is I saw myself getting leaner. And of course, again, I learned from the university, I was doing body fat. So my partner and I just have, I see all these guys with coaches. I just had this girl that she checks my body fat, and I like lean mass to fat ratio. And I didn't care about anything as long as my skin folds was getting lower, and as long as I was holding on to lean body mass, I just kept pumping in the food. And I saw myself getting the best shape I thought for that much size, because, I was very confident coming in there, but I knew you were a badass, period.
Well, let me tell you something. A lot of people, even though you got second to me at the Ironman, a lot of people didn't think you were natural at the Ironman.
I know.
And so do you think some of that MCT oil might have changed the look of what you were doing? Because not a lot of people were doing that.
Well, see, I think a lot of things, put it this way, the universe has said to me, not very many bodybuilders at that level want to be monitored,
right?
Because they could have looked at anything.
Yes.
So what happened was, she was able to say, yeah, as long as this, keep ingesting your food the whole 9. I never forgot her name. Her name was Dr. Melinda Minora, and she was a marathoner, but she was just.
Yeah, but as soon as people hear that you're working with a doctor, they think, okay, he's got to be doing something that's under the radar, that's different. But clearly, as we came into the 1990 Arnold Classic, no shows had been on the pro scene been tested before.
Right.
So all the pros didn't know how to beat a drug test, right? Yeah. So we're kind of left to our own devices. And to be 100% transparent, I came off of the drugs I was using. I never professed to be a natural bodybuilder. I never
yeah.
said I was natural, but I came off everything like a lot of the guys had done. Unfortunately, it stayed in my system too long, and I tested positive. Now, after winning the contest here, going home, and everyone assuming that I had won, we all knew that the other shoe was going to fall, and you were waiting for the results to come in.
I was so...
I imagine you had to be either assuming there's no way that I'm natural, or that there's a 50-50 chance that I could fail the test. Let's get into the mind of Mike Ashley.
Okay.
You got second place and $25,000.
Yeah.
And I actually left here thinking it's a done data. There's nothing's going to happen. But there were 5 other guys along with me, Samir Banu, and a few other people that failed the drug test behind closed doors. And I got a phone call in Canada. You must have got a phone call in Arizona. And a call that I'm not sure, were you anticipating that call? I mean, let's get into your mind, because you had family and friends and you left here either assuming I'm second place or assuming, hey, hold on, it's not over until we get the phone calls. What were you thinking?
Now, I gotta tell you, I really don't dwell in that mindset of, I wasn't there thinking, I said I should have won because I know that I was really drug free. So here's the difference in my thinking.
So you thought everybody else was not?
No. Let me just clarify. When I went to the World Championships, I'm like, as a natural bodybuilder, I know I'm darn good and I'm going to do well. And I went there to win, and thankfully I won. Now going to the Ironman Invitational, and then hearing how close we were.
Yeah,
because
very close.
My whole idea is, anybody that's using anabolic steroids has got to make some modification.
Yes.
Mike is ramping up and you guys are ramping down. Something, you guys going to change something. So I said, this is going to be my chance. I went there and I did not win. But I got to tell you guys, it was $25,000. My second my second big win. I was like not dwelling. In my mind, I said I should have, but I didn't.
Right.
I accepted it that day.
So we kind of thought it was
it's
over.
not like I was saying, oh, Sean is going to fail or this person is going to fail, because I didn't know what the process was.
I don't think any of us knew, right?
Right. So I was happy with that. And then when I get a phone call.
Well, let's give context. So I got the phone call first because I was in Canada on tour from Wayne DeMilio. And it was, you have a phone call. I don't know how he found me. I mean, the tour was public. But he said, we have sample B and we can test that in, I think it was Chicago or LA. And right on the spot, I just basically said, look, if sample A is positive, I'm 100% sure sample B is positive. It is what it is. And it was a bitter pill for me to swallow, no pun intended. I accepted it on the spot. My next call was to Joe Weider, telling him, hey, Joe, I just got the call from Wayne. What do I do? He says, well, you're qualified for the Olympia by winning the Ironman. Don't fail the next test, which was coming up in September. I just continued on business as usual. I mean, I really didn't lose a whole lot of sleep over it, because I had known that I had done exactly what I tested positive for at some point.
Right. And that's admirable. I want to point out that's admirable.
And I didn't consider you. I didn't consider what your fate was. I just went on as business as usual. Like, shoot, I got to pass the test in September. In hindsight, 30 years in our past, I try to put myself in your position. When that phone call came, give us some context of how you learned that you won.
Yeah. Well, basically, I did get the call, and they said,
were you home? Where were you?
Yeah, I was home. And they said, Mike, Sean failed the test, and you're the winner.
You had to be like, I knew it.
Dude, no.
No?
I didn't. We smack talk after, but at that moment, you got to understand, I just won $60,000. All right? I went from $25,000 to $60,000 because when I became a pro, I considered it a business. It wasn't like, some of these guys, they talk about they're back and forth. I'm a professional competitor now, and I'm looking to make a living. So for me to make that winning, it was one thing, and then my drug-free status paid off. And I'm going to tell you why. When I said I was going to compete in the World Championships, there's a doctor in Arizona. Her name was Lynn Paris. She used to compete in the IFBB. Look her up. She was
I know Lynn.
Lynn Paris.
Yeah.
She says, Michael, you will never make it as a drug-free athlete.
I think everybody felt that way.
So she told me that. There was a guy in Arizona, and he was coaching a bunch of guys. He says, look, you want to go into sport and be publicly known as the natural bodybuilder and don't do anything, or you can take some stuff like the other guys. And I just had this, my mom had a lot of influence on me, because very, very religious woman, strong values. And for me to even, she's like, you know, she was more like, my parents were so much against steroid use that it wasn't even a considered thing for me. It was like I was brought up, utilize your genetic abilities. When you go to school, just be the best you can be, the whole 9 yards. So it wasn't really an issue for me to make that decision. And I says, you know, well, I'll go and I'll see where I go with it in the sport. But I kind of got a little pissed when you tell me I can never do this. But I was very competitive as an amateur. So what is so different? I think a lot of pros sometimes, they make all these changes when they become pros. If you're winning as an amateur, look at most guys. When they win the nationals and go into pros, they don't get last place. I don't know about now, but yeah. I'm saying you go from being an amateur to a pro. You were a pro that made a statement right off the bat. You look at a lot of guys coming out of nationals because it was tough. Today, these guys could go to 7-Eleven and get a pro card. Back, we had to win either nationals or the world championships. Period. That's the only way you became pro. And then the next thing was North America. Now, there's so many pros, and I applaud it because it's great for the sport and it's great for the athletes. So don't get me wrong. Right. But back in my time, getting a pro card was like, oh, savior came down and blessed me.
I think few people remember what that was like, but not very many people remember getting $60,000 in one day. So that had to validate your entire existence as a bodybuilder. Almost, I feel like if I were you, I'd be going around like, remember when Ali knocked out Sonny Liston and he's like, I shook up the world, I told you. That would have been me.
Yeah.
Because nobody believed that you were natural.
Yeah, but you got to remember, I said I should have won because I knew I was drug-free.
Right.
I don't know that about the other guys, but I knew I was. So when it happened, it wasn't like, wow. It was, wow, I won. But it was like, you know that saying, like, it was meant to be or something like that. And nothing, I don't want to ever disregard your hard work and your dedication and your commitment going towards that title. I knew you bust your ass off and, you know, you were just
But I also knew I had taken the drug. I had tested
Right.
positive. Now, mind you, that being said, through word of mouth, talking with other people, water-based this, orals that, I mean, it's all trial and error. It's one big experiment. It was rolling the dice, right? But in hindsight, I never put myself in your position because I didn't feel like the money was taken away, or the only thing I felt was taken away was me returning the damn trophy. That was brutal. Man, I had to take the trophy from my mom's fireplace and explain to my mom, yeah, I failed the test and I got to give this to the guy that actually won the show. And she says, well, what are you going to do? I said, well, I got to go to the Mr. Olympia, Mom. And that's not for another 7 months. Thank God I went into the Mr. Olympia and I passed the test and I elevated to 3rd place, which for me kind of made it more tolerable. I survived. This news didn't travel as fast as it does now. But I put myself in your position a few times and I thought, that would have been my moment to brag. That look, here's the trophy, here's the money, here's the test results. Screw you guys. Like, I'm natural. I told you so. And you never did that. You didn't gloat about it.
Well, you know something? Until today, it's kind of funny because recently I saw that guy, Dave Palumbo, he had an interview. He invited me on his show. And it's like a crime. That's why even last night I proudly said I was natural. I competed natural because they made it seem like a crime. You got to watch this. In powerlifting, they didn't believe I was natural.
Yeah.
Okay. In bodybuilding, they didn't believe I was natural. So there was no corner for me. And the natural bodybuilders didn't believe I was natural either because they were pissed that I competed in the IFBB and not in the... Because I won the NABA Natural Mr. America.
Wow.
But then I went to the IFBB, the NPC Nationals. Because why? And it was just a decision, and it was a simple decision. If you become a pro back then, in NABA or any of those organizations, you win a top show. I don't even think you get like $1,000.
Yeah, the money wasn't right.
The winning money for a pro back then was like $2,500.
Yeah.
I get exposed for 2,500 as an IFBB pro.
Right.
And so when you look at the logic,
The reward wasn't there.
the reward wasn't there, and it was just basic common sense. So you got to remember, Mike Ashley has been dogged in every single arena because of the fact that I was natural.
So tell me why. Tell me, I need to hear the principle. I mean, with the temptation as great as it is, and as good as you were winning naturally, why not try? Let me see what something does. There must have been some type of resistance or principle in your mind that said, I don't even want to know what Diana Ball is like. I don't want to know what people are using testosterone right now. They call it HRT, hormone replacement therapy, which is justification for using anabolics. As you age, your natural testosterone level goes down, you get on a hormone replacement therapy, and it's widely accepted as a natural form of energizing your body. You're not a guy that's going to ever do that.
I did blood work, and I'm gonna tell you guys something. And people, again, I know when you do this, they're gonna say Mike's full of shit. Whatever. I don't care, because what happens is I do blood work, and I could show you where I have a testosterone level as high as 1,300. Now you gotta remember, the top level is 850. Why, I don't know until today. Even and total testosterone is really what's the significant. That was significantly high also. It was over 250. So I'm like, these numbers were, because I'm not going to say, right now we have this insulting thing going on where they call the IFB bro bodybuilders the bro, and they have these other guys that are calling them the science base, and I personally don't give a crap about either side. You educate yourself and you do the best you can in your sport, and that's what I did. Was I tried to learn as much, and I'm never ever going to say today, if I knew what I knew then what today, I would be even a better bodybuilder. Because
a better natural bodybuilder.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. Are steroids bad? I mean, why are so many people using them if they don't work? And if you're smart, you are book smart, I'm going to say if, you know the science. You know what anabolic steroids can do to a person. They're not all detrimental. So if they work, and if they're being prescribed by doctors, and if they do the things that they claim, why wouldn't the natural dabble in the pharmaceutical realm?
Right. I started out as a natural bodybuilder, right? My career went off beautifully as a natural bodybuilder. Why change it? Now you might agree with me, you might disagree with me. You know how many guest appearances I got?
Oh yeah, you got a lot of work
based on being a natural bodybuilder.
Right.
So I looked at it and I said, so I'm just going to be another bodybuilder if I start using anabolic steroids.
Or maybe you can be Mr. Olympia.
But I'm going to be a different. Now that's a gamble.
Okay, yeah.
Because once you start taking it, there's no turning back.
That's right.
And the bottom line is, I would say now I know more than I knew then. Back then, I don't know what the side effects were going to be for me.
Right.
Because, everybody's just talking about anabolic steroids, but bodybuilders take more than just testosterone.
Of course.
And so what happens, you see all these extremes, and I'm like, I'm going to go my journey the way I've been going it.
That's admirable.
I mean,
in this climate, it's admirable because we watched Muhammad Ali do the same thing, right? Muhammad went the way that was the road less taken, and there was a lot of admiration for that because he was doing it at a time that was not acceptable. Becoming a Muslim, becoming an activist, you doing the drug-free way was not fashionable. As a matter of fact, some of your colleagues didn't. I think they fell away from you and actually didn't want to believe any of that stuff because they were doing the drugs.
Right.
Did you constantly get challenged throughout your career about being a natural bodybuilder? How did you deal with that?
I get challenged all the way through. I remember one time I went to France and I was doing a seminar, and everyone applauded, boom, boom, boom. I told them about, how I trained, the way I dieted. Because let me tell you, I was extreme. No one has ever. And I was thinking, I think I'm going to start doing some, like a YouTube channel talking about some of the approaches, because I had logs on the whole 9 yards. And I said, my discipline level is superior to a lot of other competitors.
There's no question. I mean, the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, I said my discipline level, my back then I was incorporating powerlifting and bodybuilding, which they're doing now, but I was doing it way back when. They can't say that I followed them. I was doing it back from, when I was in the military. Right. I got out of the military in 81, and I was back in the 70s. I was competing powerlifting and bodybuilding, doing both. And I think there was something to the approach that Mike Ashley did that worked for him. So let's say whatever wacky formula I had worked for me, and I was never ever doing poorly in bodybuilding until I had my injuries. Because remember, it was injuries that knocked me out of the sport, and not that I never really experienced the 90s because, you know, you had the injuries, and then you get to a point where you got to have like a realistic check with yourself. And so I moved on another path.
But don't most athletes, when they get injured, resort to testosterone or steroids for recovery? I mean, I've seen so many athletes get hurt and try to come back using steroids. I mean, I saw Tiger Woods came back using, got busted with growth hormone, and it helps in the healing process. That was never a thought for you.
But it was just not.
Yeah.
You got to remember, what would Mike Ashley have done at that point? What would have been so phenomenal for me at that point? Hey, I respect every athlete in the sport, and I don't have a problem saying, Sean Ray, you had damn great genetics. I mean, you had a great structure. You did very well. You proved yourself in the sport. The Ronnie Colemans, the Lee Haney's, there's a lot of great bodybuilders. All of a sudden now, Mike Ashley's going to take anabolic steroids and he's going to just blow everybody away.
Right.
I probably would have been very competitive, but I don't know how. It's also a gamble.
Yeah.
Because you don't know how it's going to affect you. I mean, I listened to Ronnie Coleman's story, and I remember when he was natural, and when he started taking it, I'm like, dude, this was, for him, it worked phenomenal.
Yeah, it was a game changer.
And he talked about it.
Yeah, he did.
He talked about the difference it made. But I could show you a lot of pros that also took steroids. They didn't go that way.
They're dead.
Some of them are dead. And I could tell you about a lot with great genetics, too, that it didn't go that way. And, you know, I already created a name for myself, and I was like, the risk outweighed the benefits for me at that point.
And so you segued from the stage into retirement, but where did you go? I know today you're like in the gym business, you're a trainer. Tell us how you segued out of bodybuilding and didn't get caught up with trying to recapture the old glory.
Well, my first pro show, I bought a condo. And that's why I say bodybuilding winnings can change your life forever, depending on how you do it. And that was only $10,000, and I put on a deposit on a condo in Arizona. And then when I moved to Florida, I sold that condo to buy my first gym.
Okay.
All right. And of course, I had the Arnold Classic winnings after that, Detroit winnings after that. And, you know, I had an advisor, and a part goes to this and part goes to that. And, you know, I got into the gym business, and I still trained, but I was also realistic.
You're training people as a gym owner?
I trained myself, and I also trained others.
Okay.
But I never saw, to say come back, like, I mean, I applaud Kevin for what he did, and he had to be fulfilled within himself, Flex the same. But me, I say if I go back, I have to go back winning.
Right.
I don't want to go back just to go back. And I didn't see that. You know,
the last time you were on stage was what year?
I think it was 84. Yeah.
No, not 84. 94?
94, I'm sorry. Yeah, 94.
Where was that?
At Niagara Falls.
Okay.
I think I got fifth. That was the last time Gaspari competed also.
It's also the time I got second in Olympia for the first time.
Congrats.
I was on an upward trajectory.
Yeah, he was on an upward trajectory. And, you know, once they stopped testing, I'm like, dude, I got to be realistic.
Yeah.
If I'm not going to do what they do, come on, let's get real. I can't compete. So I made a realistic decision to go another avenue, and you know, I went into the gym business, and I stayed in the gym business, and then after that, I didn't even like that as much anymore. I went into more of an exclusive thing now, just doing one-on-one training. So my gym right now is a one-on-one training gym, no memberships.
Florida? Still in Florida?
Still in Florida.
How old are you now?
I'm 62.
62.
Yeah,
you got a few years on me. It sounds like you got a late start. Yeah, I mean, I was 17 when I started.
Yeah.
But at 62, you're right there with Labrada and some of the guys. So you're here now. What does it feel like being back? You're on stage with Arnold. You're up there with Ronnie Coleman. You've been here numerous times supporting the Arnold Classic. I never see you like at the Olympia. You go to other shows?
Yeah, I've gone to the Olympia. I'm back, and I think there's been a change right now. When Robin Chang was primarily involved with the Olympia, because I did something for Robin, and Robin has always remembered me for that. Because, you know, sometimes when the photographers were doing their shoots, you know, the athletes sometimes go more to the popular ones, you know,
in the magazines,
like the Mike Nevews and all of that back then. I mean, like a guy like Rolf de Haan was not as popular then, but he said, Mike, I need to shoot with you after the Arnold. I would give him the time.
Yeah.
I remember doing the same thing with Robin. Robin never forgot me. Later on, I'm like, I'd get on the phone and I said, Robin, I'm not looking for free tickets. I pay for my tickets, but I'm a bodybuilder. I want to see the show. I don't want to be
Right.
no nosebleeds or nothing like that.
Right.
I want good seats. And I was always able to connect with him. And, you know, so I get, and the Vegas experience too. And I would go to the shows because I got into bodybuilding, loving it by seeing the sport, watching guys do it. And actually now I'm having that experience again.
Isn't
you
it
know?
crazy you come full circle? I mean, Mike's one of the guys where a lot of people came for him through me, not accepting, not wanting to believe that you were natural,
Right.
not wanting to accept that I actually failed the test. I've never denied failing the test, and when you fail the test, you lose. I've
Yeah.
always acknowledged that. But what I respected about Mike was that Mike didn't gloat about it. Mike always said, I'm natural. I'm not surprised I won. I was supposed to win. That's what we trained to do. And that takes a certain type of respect that was commanded from you to me. I've always respected the idea that I returned the trophy to somebody that actually deserved the trophy. So I had no complaints in 1990. And of course, a lot of bodybuilders changed in 1990 with the drug testing. Even, that was the year I beat Rich Kaspari at the 1990 Olympia. And Lee Haney came in very small. Mike Christian was one of those guys that I think he grew in the 1990 Olympia.
Yeah.
But they got rid of the testing. Were you disappointed when they got rid of the testing? Was
Hell
that was a game changer for you?
I was disappointed. You gotta be kidding me. If they didn't take it away, my journey I wouldn't say how much longer because I still had injuries here and there, but I felt I could have been more competitive if it wasn't there.
Yeah.
But, you know, the way I look at it, and sometimes people just think about themselves and they don't necessarily look at the big picture. Like a promoter has to have a show, and I try to imagine myself being a promoter and how much money they lose if they don't get the spectators there, if they don't get
top
the
athletes,
if they don't get the this and the that. And, you know, in my own little world, I'm like, some of the big names would not be as big if drugs was out of the sport. Would there be still a bodybuilding? Yes, there would still be a sport. I believe we can do it. There's a lot of data now. Because you got to remember, back in our time, they consider us like some wacky bunch in this small neighborhood. And now, especially with the Arnold Classic, I'm so proud to say it's one of the largest sporting events in the world because they say bodybuilding this, but bodybuilding has opened up a window to all these sports. Because if it wasn't for COVID, look at all the different sports that would be here this weekend.
Yeah, we'll be back in March.
Exactly. And so with bodybuilding opening up that window for all the various sports, I mean, I just want to see it just continue to blossom and grow. So, you know, Mike Ashley made a choice, and his choice took him along that path. But the choice of the larger picture is not necessarily in the best interest of the parties that are involved with that. So,
Well, yeah, we saw a few good big names go down in 1990 here and also in Chicago. And with that, we saw the drug testing kind of disappear. But for a moment in time, we got to witness the natural. And believe it or not, because he doesn't care, believe it or not.
That's right.
He passed all the tests and he did exactly what he was supposed to do. Stay true to his word. And who's going to walk away? Like he got out literally at the prime of his career. And here you are enjoying the fruit of your labor. The Arnold Classic has made people legendary in our game.
Absolutely.
Ronnie Coleman, Flex Wheeler, Kevin Levrone, the late Nasser El Somebody, Brad Schwarn. And this weekend, we may have a new champion. I'm going with Nick Walker on record. We just saw the prejudging. And who would have thought that Arnold Schwarzenegger would have brought people together for a lifetime? This is like the 33rd year.
Exactly.
And you and I were in the second Arnold Classic.
That's
and we're,
right.
If it's not for Arnold, we're not here. We're not growing up and growing old together. I think there's a lot of cancel culture out there. You know, Arnold said some controversial things. People are trying to take it out of context and bring him down. But you know what? If there's no Arnold, there's no Mike Ashley. There's actually no Sean Ray.
That's right.
Because for a lot of people, there's 16 Mr. Olympia champions since 1965 in 56 years. Do the math. 16 winners. They're celebrated. Right. They're immortals. Yeah. But here at the Arnold Classic, you've got a very diverse group of people that have had the opportunity to win the Arnold Classic. I tell it with pride that the only reason I was able to buy my first house was because I won the 91 Arnold Classic. Mike started a business that he's parlayed, that he's still doing today because of Arnold. So for all those people out there that have strong opinions on what someone says, I mean, I put my foot in my mouth a million times. I was a failure here in 1990, but there's ways that you can kind of redeem yourself. And I think by Arnold putting this show on, in spite of a COVID, in spite of losing the Expo, he's brought us back together again.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting when you start talking about bodybuilding on a competitive sense. And then you look at the other side where it throws two people from two different worlds together for a lifetime.
Absolutely.
Because we are in this for life. It's Brothers in Iron. That was started by Joe and Ben Weider.
Yeah.
And the blessing of Joe and Ben Weider is Arnold. And through Arnold, you now have the
Right,
natural.
right.
You have me and all the other athletes that we celebrate
Yeah.
every year here in Columbus, Ohio. But it's been great catching up with you, man.
Yeah, definitely, man.
I mean, the Where Are They Now series is really making the world a smaller place. But this is Mike Ashley. Any injuries today? Are you battling anything? Are you healthy, or what's the latest?
I'm healthy, but you know, in terms of injuries, yeah, I had to have, you know, I had my knee actually replaced.
Yeah.
And with the technology, I mean, they told me years ago I should have done it, and I didn't, because I felt, one of the doctors says, man, the way you train, you're gonna have to replace it again, because you know, they back then they were giving like 8 or 10 years, and now they're saying, you know, I have a good 30. And
are you in the gym still? You still working out?
Yeah, I still exercise.
Yeah.
I'm not at the same, I would say. Now my journey is a little different.
You're exercising, not training.
I'm exercising. I will say with a tip of training, because you know we never lose it. But my focus is not in the same place. I'm more about optimal health, and as I was then, but not. You know, with every sport, and I want to say this often because sometimes I see the media and they talk about, you know, what happens with some of the athletes, and I don't care. You don't have to change judging or anything in the sport, because they're going to be extremists regardless.
Right.
You go into any sport, you're going to have some extremists. But I think when you get out of the sport, you don't have to go to that level of risk, because risk is not just about steroid use, or whether risk is about excessive loads, risk is about, you know,
too many calories,
you know, all these various things that you do to take the body out of its norm to some other norm for competition. So I will say I am passionate about exercise, and I help my customers with it, and I also live the lifestyle, but my focus is not how jacked I'm going to be down the road.
So if somebody wanted to get with you to train, where can they find you?
Well, my facility is in Deerfield Beach, Say Fitness, and our website is sayfitness.com.
Say, S-A-Y.
S-A-Y. I said something. Say what?
Say what?
Say
That's in
Fitness.
Florida, by the way.
Yes, yes.
All right, sayfitness.com. You on Instagram?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. Michael_Ashley.
Michael_Ashley.
Yeah.
And then there's 86.
86, yeah.
I'm helping the guy out.
I got to tell you guys something. I have to get up on the ball with social media. I applaud you guys. Michael Ashley 86. Yeah.
All right, Michael Ashley 86. All right, man. So that's going to do it for us at the Where Are They Now here at the Arnold Classic here in Columbus, Ohio. Stay tuned to Digital Muscle for more updates and Where Are They Nows with Mike Ashley. I'm Sean Ray.
And thanks for the opportunity.
Guys, our official announcement of the All In, All Access Mutant Nation free ticket to the Mr. Olympia 2021 is Craig Tesner. Craig Tesner, you are the lucky winner. You're going to get the VIP treatment at the Mr. Olympia All In, All Access experience October 8th and 9th in Orlando, Florida. Compliments of the Mutant Nation. I'll be your host. We'll see you there.